The United States Military Academy at West Point. The name evokes feelings of pride and achievement. A place for excellence in academics, in military leadership, and self-service. World-renowned as a top-tier academic institution, the Academy combines cutting-edge technology and educational innovation in state-of-the-art facilities housed at this historic site. Both past and present, a long gray line full of warrior scholars who are dedicated to the nation, serve a cause higher than themselves.
These guys are here.
The core curriculum of the Academy stresses the fundamentals of engineering and military leadership. Like cadets can choose from among more than 40 subjects for their majors, including computer science, information technology, foreign languages, and economics. All of this to go along with 20 different engineering degrees. Fitness is a key component for every Army officer. So naturally, the Academy places a high value on physical training. The women is competing in one of the 29 intercollegiate club sports, participating in intramurals, representing the black and gold in one of the Army's 25 NCAA teams. Every cadet is an athlete. Even for those who come here prepared to face a challenge, the road to becoming an Army officer is a demanding one, and it should be. Because, at a moment's notice, Army soldiers can be deployed throughout the world to serve in areas of unrest and conflict. To prepare cadets for the challenges they will face as Army officers, the Academy stresses critical thinking and creative problem solving. Cadets are not taught what to think, they are taught how to think, so that when they emerge as Army officers, they will be soldier scholars, prepared for the extraordinary responsibility faced by leaders of character and service to our nation. For more than 2 centuries, the United States Military Academy has developed cadets into leaders of character, providing an education rich in military excellence and steeped in tradition. This is not just the Army's Academy, it is America's Academy, a place that embodies the time-honored values of our nation.
At the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, our focus is producing leaders of character for our Navy and Marine Corps. Through a rigorous 4-year program, we help young men and women achieve the highest moral, mental, and physical standards to meet this challenge. We seek to develop leaders with the highest ethical standards, rock-solid personal integrity, and the guts to stand up for what's right. A top education is a priority. A fundamental understanding of engineering, math and science, history, communication skills, and motivational leadership is essential to succeed as a naval officer. We enable midshipmen to excel, whether in the military or in government or industry. Athletics play a major part in developing future leaders. We develop physical toughness and a gut-level appreciation for teamwork and determination. We want our future officers to be team builders and learn how to motivate others to excel. We want to play on the athletic field and fight on the battlefield to win. Those graduating from the Naval Academy have the opportunity to drive ships and launch missiles, fly advanced aircraft, launch torpedoes from submarines, or lead marines into battle. All have the opportunity to be leaders in the world's finest Navy and Marine Corps. In 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower directed the establishment of America's newest service academy. This is the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado, nestled against the eastern slopes of the majestic Rocky Mountains. The campus is comprised of 18,000 acres. Our proud heritage includes the accomplishments of military aviation pioneers like Billy Mitchell, Hap Arnold, and Chuck Yeager. Air Force Academy graduates include a Medal of Honor winner and many astronauts. Our goal is to produce officers who have the knowledge and motivation essential to leaders of character for our nation. Character development is a key part of the Cadets Academy experience.
Now when you step off that bus and cross the blue line that is behind you, you accepted a warrior challenge to become the best Air Force officer you can possibly be.
Air Force cadets hone their leadership skills and become professionals who put integrity first, service before self, and have a commitment to excellence in everything they do. Our cadets get intense instruction in a broad range of academic, athletic, and professional training opportunities.
Yes, sir.
Each cadet may choose from 32 academic majors, a number of minors, and many graduate with more than one major. Our athletic facilities are some of the finest in the nation and support intercollegiate, intramural, and club competition at the highest levels. Cadets learn about flying in the world's premier aviation program. Over 90% of our soaring instructor pilots and free-fall parachute instructors are cadets. Cadets also gain first-hand experience through exciting summer programs in Air Force units located around the world. Physical fitness is very important, since the Academy sits 7,258 feet above sea level. In this thin air, cadets have to be in top shape to perform at their best. Our graduates take with them a Bachelor of Science degree and a commission as a second lieutenant in the Air Force. To help soar as high as possible, the Air Force offers a flight plan to success.
Okay, let's start this military panel work session. Really appreciate it. This is a good group, right? We got a good group of folks. For a show of hands on student stuff. Show me how many seniors are here. Good stuff. So I bet you all three of you have already had some progress in your advanced looking at this choice. How many juniors? A couple of juniors. Good, right? You're right where you should be in terms of timing and trajectory of the decision. How many sophomores? Well done. Ahead of the schedule, ahead of the game. Well done, right? It's going to really get important. Okay, here's the bonus or the bonus prize here. How many freshmen? Yes. That's awesome. I mean, obviously, we emphasize that by acknowledging that this is a pretty important decision that requires a lot of good intelligence, a lot of good information to decide and to make a quality decision on your pathway. So, we've got about 45 minutes. I want to do something really quick. I want to make sure you guys understand that the members of the panel get a quick little debrief on who they are. And then we want to have like a little small lightning round of questions. We're going to tee it up, warming up, and hopefully are questions that fit the students' needs and desires in terms of questions. But then we're going to turn it quickly over to you. And all of those students that raise their hand, I'm counting on you guys to ask any of the questions you really want to throw out there. And then once you guys are tired, we'll let the parents step in. I'm sure they're going to come at us as well. All right. So real brief, real fast. I'll role model here. Dwayne Romero graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1987. Was a combat engineer, airborne ranger, served in Germany and then the first Gulf War. I've got two of my West Point buddies and combat buddies and business partners here with me, so we got that really well covered. And I graduated out of a high school in Texas, and I hope you guys do the same thing, model this for these kids. Graduated from high school in Texas and only applied to West Point, which may not have been the best choice for me, knowing that I was kind of gambling. One shot, that's it, gambling. All right, so Jim, you want to take from here? We're going to go quickly across the board.
Yeah, so Jim Corporal of West Point, 87, classmate, same resume essentially, and Dwayne. I'm Southeastern Pennsylvania, was a high school valedictorian, Eagle Scout, had a pretty good high school resume, had a lot of opportunities. One mistake I think I made, I didn't go to West Point. I should have applied to the other two, not that I would have chosen them. I would never change that, but the advice you're going to hear about academies is don't limit yourself to one. Now, I'm not going to get the cadets and the recent graduate to echo that because they're very loyal still, which we applaud. But in the advice we like to give, we've spent more time probably prepping kids who are interested in Navy and Air Force than West Point. And we're fully supportive of that. In fact, I'll do my best today to represent Navy because we don't have anyone here from them. I spent a semester as an exchange cadet like these guys are doing today.
Hey, Deanna, hold on a second. So Jim's pretty hot. He was like number 4 in our class. He was number 1 in our class for a while until he got a
Girlfriend.
They didn't even practice that. Isn't that cool? Exactly. All right, Deanna, let's go.
Deanna Adams. I am from Griswold, Connecticut. I joined the Army in 2012. I did 4 years in the Guard. I was an X-ray tech, so I went medical field. I then applied to West Point again. I also didn't apply anywhere else, but I was in the Army, so I knew I didn't want to go to the other academies, so a little bit different on that. But I only applied to West Point, went there for 4 years, graduated, commissioned as an infantry officer in 2020. And I'm stationed now at Fort Carson, Colorado.
Exciting.
Down
By the way, everyone look at her. I love the fact you wore blue. This is awesome to demonstrate the pathway that she has been able to achieve. She is an absolute superstar. There's a lot of intel here. Next.
Hi everyone, I'm Lexi Maranta, so I'm a junior at West Point, class of 2026. I'm a psychology major, and so my dad is currently working at an Air Force base over in England, so that's where my family's from right now. But yeah, like mentioned, I'm at the Air Force Academy for a semester exchange, so all of us are free to answer questions about West Point and Air Force, a little bit about it, and throw Navy in there as well.
Max Felter, also junior. I'm a data science major at West Point. Had a brother go through West Point, a dad as well. Same class as the gentleman here, actually. Yeah, that's me. I'm from California. You guys said that.
Hello everyone, I'm Jack Mazzini. Grew up in Sparta, New Jersey, so North Jersey, about an hour away from West Point. Went to West Point sports camps growing up, and that's how I sort of found my way to West Point. It was between ROTC and West Point, so if you have any ROTC questions about making that decision, I can talk to you about that. And then at West Point, I'm doing mechanical engineering, club soccer, like to ski still, and then planning to either branch engineers or infantry, hopefully. But.
So last and least, Peter Finken. I'm visiting my good friends Jim and Dwayne here from Connecticut, so they asked me to be part of this. I'm honored to be here to talk to kids. I do this in Connecticut as well. I'm a liaison for the United States Military Academy, but I'll emphasize what Jim and Dwayne said. I counsel kids and support kids in any military service. So Marines, Navy, Air Force, ROTC, it doesn't matter. So my 2 oldest brothers served in Vietnam. One was a Marine Corps officer. I've had nephews in the Marines. My son is currently serving. He graduated from West Point in 2019. Unlike Jim and Dwayne, I did apply to all 3 academies, my twin brother and I. We didn't get into the other 2, so we ended up at West Point. I'm not near as smart as the gentleman down at the end, so I kind of backed in the door. But very proud of service, and again, it's honored to be here talking to each of you because you've selected to consider service to our country, and it's something I'm passionate about even to this day, even though I got out like Jim and Dwayne back in 1993. 1988 West Point grad, but great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, Pete and I and Jim all served in the 60th Infantry Battalion, 1st Armored Division, Germany, 87 and 91. But then we all went to the Gulf War together, same battalion, Delta Company, and then Bravo Company. We're all XOs. That's second command of an engineer company. Yeah, I'm going to put you on the spot first. I want you, please, just to give you guys a response to the question of how best to be preparing as a high school student, especially the younger grades, in order to prepare and to think about the best candidacy for yourself. I realize your path is unique. Obviously, you're the National Guard piece, but I think that has some richness. So please, give them some input.
I think actually these guys would probably be a better answer for that
All right, so
question.
we're going to get
Yeah, in terms of like high school
Let's
students
go.
going straight in. So yeah, I'll go right after. Or you can go right after. So I'm almost done. Don't worry. No. So like I said, I was in the Army beforehand, so my preparation was in the Army. A lot of the stuff I did in high school, I didn't really plan to go to any academy. I thought college would be a good idea because I probably needed it, but I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do. So I did all of the programs I did in high school because I was interested in them and not necessarily because I wanted to get into a good college. So I like want to emphasize, you know, a lot of the programs they have, like honor societies, and, you know, they have the national honor societies, they have like all the big, you know, programs and things that you can involve yourself in high school, and that's going to set you up for success later on. But, you know, do those programs because you want to do them. Don't do them like to put them on a resume. And that's my biggest advice on that, like especially for high school students. So I did all that stuff in high school, but I enlisted. I didn't even think about, you know, doing it for college applications. So just like keep that like in the back of your minds when you're doing, you know, things for yourself in high school.
Okay, I mean, I want to echo what she said about doing the things that you like. I think West Point can tell when you're passionate about things, and those are the things that really matter. So when you're writing your application, you're not just putting in, oh, I did these clubs. You're also writing an essay, right? And if you can talk about those things that you did in depth and talk about why they matter to you and like why you chose to do them, they're going to look at that and they're going to see like the passion. So at the end of the day, like the reason I stay at West Point is because I'm passionate about the Army. I'm passionate about West Point. And that kind of passion is what's going to carry you through college. I think really any college. And in addition, like being honest with myself was a huge step. So I looked at, you know, where I was, and I was not ready to run as fast as everybody else at West Point, right? I was a pretty weak runner. And so being honest with myself and saying, man, I'm pretty slow. Like I should probably go start running like after school. That was a big step for me. So, you know, I joined my school's cross country team, and I was not the top runner. But, you know, I had a lot of fun, and I got better at something that I was weak at. And that's, you know, been very beneficial at West Point because you do a fair amount of running. So that's a good, yeah.
Max, you're sitting out there in the West Coast, California. What are you thinking?
I was, still sometimes. So I think obviously what's been said is very valid, and also West Point's an academic institution as well. I think grades are super important as they are for any application. So that's definitely something I would certainly keep in mind. I'm sure you are. But like no matter who you are, even if you're super smart, grades or like classes are still going to kind of kick your butt when you show up. Like you got to get used to it. So I think just preparing yourself for like the academic rigor at the academy is important, and maybe having an idea of what you're interested in might just take some stress off, because you declare like a year in, so you have a bunch of time. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I showed up, but I found out. But I think if you know what you're interested in, then showing up, you'll actually be a little bit more informed as you search through the academic side.
Yeah.
I think something important that Max touched on is that the academy, part of the reason why academics might be challenging is because it's also demanding physically, leadership-wise. You have all those components sort of combining together. And I think that in the application process, that's also something that West Point looks for, that you're preparing yourself with the clubs that you do. So maybe athletics, maybe music, if you're into that. I did band all 4 years of high school. Leadership clubs, so student council. I know Eagle Scout was mentioned, Boys State and Girls State. If you look into that, that's super beneficial for your resume. Just putting yourself into those leadership positions, like team captain, to gain that experience, and it gives you something to talk about. Like Lexi mentioned, in some of your essays or interviews, what challenges did you face in a leadership position and how did you overcome it? That is what you're going to pull on those experiences for those applications. So just building yourself holistically and focusing on all the concepts is really beneficial. Sets you up well to get into West Point, and then also at West Point, it'll make you more successful there.
For the 3 cadets in the center, did any one of you also apply in a parallel path on the ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Corps? And how far along did you get with that?
I got all the scholarships given
Yeah.
to the
So you
schools.
literally, at a certain point, you were considering priority probably leaning towards the West Point, but what was that like? What was your priority in your headset at the time?
Between ROTC and West Point. So at the time, I had 2 or 3 ROTC scholarships, and then West Point also. And it came down to almost pretty much the last 2 weeks. And I was like, which one do I do? Because I was listening to other people's argument for ROTC side is you have that better balance of life. You have. Okay. Yes, sir. So ROTC is basically like your typical college university. Most of them usually offer a program in which you can do the military stuff and then still commission as a military officer. Whereas West Point and the Academies is everyone at the academy is doing the military stuff and is going to commission. So So RTC is like almost a club within a university is a way I could describe it.
You want to jump in at the end?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to that too. So our ROTC programs, they're really great, and a lot of colleges have them. And then the big difference is when you do an ROTC program, when you graduate, you have the opportunity to do active duty or reserves. And that almost doesn't matter. Like sometimes it is by OML, like, you know, whatever, how well you rank, what you get. But some people who are really good and, you know, they want to go active duty, they just don't get the opportunity to do it, just based on numbers and whoever graduates from those programs. Whereas every cadet at West Point or the Naval Academy or Air Force, they will automatically go active duty for 5 years. So that's the big difference, and a lot of reasons why when people are like in that mix of ROTC or West Point, they choose West Point.
Yes. And there's a commissioning source. So think about our nation's military needs officers, leadership to run the organizations that make up the military officers. So as a commissioning source, ROTC is about 80 to 85% every year of the fresh new officers. About 10 to 15%, maybe 12% is the service academy, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and the United States Military Academy, West Point. And then there is a small batch, and some of you guys maybe need to later, some of the parents, OCS, Officer Candidate School, that's another commissioning source, quite small, 3 to 5% roughly, nationwide annually. So by far, the ROTC is the most accessible, just in terms of sheer numbers, the availability for that pathway. And the application standards are very similar with the service academy. So that's why, right, you were able to complete ROTC applications and process through, think fitness, GPA, think the Dodd-Merv, the medical examinations, those are internally consistent. The timelines are generally consistent for decision making, roughly. And from a recent relative, I got 2 daughters. 2 of my 3 daughters have graduated here and have gone on to national ROTC scholarships. One at Wake Forest and one at Duke. So we got some fresh, and then we have another Army officer here, right? For sure. Yeah. We got another Army officer who should probably be up here.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I'm taking pictures. So
ROTC, right?
Yeah, my name's Chris. I'm Deanna's husband, so I'm recording the pictures. But yeah, ROTC, they hit the nail on the head. The big thing I would say is for ROTC, you do about 4 to 6 hours of military stuff a week, and then the rest of the time you're a full-time college student. So I went to a small school in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm from Ohio originally, go Buckeyes. You know, I wanted to get out of state, didn't quite make it. Made it down to Cincinnati, and so my requirement was I would do about 4 to 6 hours a week, maybe an hour and a half a day of military stuff, and then over the summer we had opportunities to train alongside some of the military academy folks. Instead of doing like internships or typical stuff that normal college students do, we focus on our military training over the summer. So if you're unsure about the military, I think it's a great route because you can try it, and then you can decide to do something else. If you don't get a scholarship out of high school, you can go and try to get a scholarship from the university actually in the program for 3 years or 2 years. It really is just like a taster of the military. I knew I wanted to go to the military. I'm just not as smart as the folks up there. So if you do have any questions about ROTC, I can definitely answer that.
That's good, man. Actually, we're going to flew for Duke University business school starting this fall.
Yes, yeah.
So he's getting humble. Hey, that's pretty good.
So yeah, I was
sure.
gonna answer that. The best decision I've ever made was join the military. 1, I met my beautiful wife up there. 2, I've seen like 30 countries, and then 3, I've gotten 2 private school degrees, probably totaling about $300,000 or $400,000 worth of school for free from the military.
They pay for your undergrad.
So they paid for my undergrad, full through ROTC, because as he mentioned, it's a scholarship. They pay for your school in return for 8 years of service afterwards, and then now I'm going back to grad school for GI.
Yeah.
So,
Super good stuff.
Really? No, I didn't.
Pete, you advise high school students over there in Connecticut. Anything to add on the choice between ROTC or Service Academy, or any perspective that we're missed so far on this one? Go.
So the only thing I would add is the key thing is preparation. And I said this to Robert earlier. If you go to the academies, it's all about time management. So if you can take a couple of the things off the table by being really good at them when you go in, it really makes it easier. So I won't reiterate service because that's the number one thing. If you're choosing to serve, that's why you're here. And to what Chris said, ROTC or the academies, you're going to be an officer. And that's the most important thing. And that's the academies or ROTC are a means to an end. But I'll come back to taking the stressors off the table because you have limited time. So I advise kids and young ladies, young men, swimming, right? Some people at the academies, they come in and it's a mandatory class and there's rock swimming and it's a stressor to go in and not being able to swim. So if you haven't done any swimming, think about it. Just take some basic classes. The other thing that Robert and I talked about is taking accelerated classes in high school. I took college calculus, college chemistry, and college English as a senior in high school. Back in the day when I was there, you could only validate one class, and that was chemistry. But it helped me because I could then do a major and a minor, and I graduated with engineering management and a minor. So again, one thing to do in high school is to prepare for that, and that is a good thing that just really allowed me a lot of flexibility at the academy. So,
Great color. I'm sure it has a great background. From there. I had no idea that you had a major in minors. I mean,
yeah, and I'll just add that. So the academies quickly, it did, right? And I'm not even knowledgeable. But my son had a classmate, really good friends. His father and I graduated together in '88. He was super smart. He graduated number 4 in his class. He validated 12 classes as a cadet at West Point. So he got a mechanical engineering major by the end of his junior year. And these guys are laughing because I bet one or two of these are in the same boat. But he was sitting there his junior year going, what do I want to do? Well, I maybe want to become a doctor after I serve in the Corps of Engineers. So he started doing pre-med classes. And that wasn't an option when Jim, Dwayne, and I went there. But it is today. They really open up the academics at the academies so that if you are ahead of schedule, you can validate a lot more classes. So,
yeah. Kathy, got a comment?
Last comment.
You got
So
it.
difference between ROTC and West Point and any of the service academies that you'll notice as an active duty service member currently serving, you have the connections of the people in your class. So if I need anything or if my husband needs anything as an ROTC person, I'll call up my friend who is literally my classmate, but his like office mate, right? So like if I need something or she needs something or anything in like the military when you're actually serving, you're gonna know somebody. You're never gonna show up to a unit and be like, oh, I don't know anyone here, I don't have any friends, or you're never gonna, that's not gonna happen. When you do ROTC, because it is a small population, and normally you're with like your school, a lot of those people don't all go active duty, right? So when you go to a duty station, a lot of times you're not gonna have somebody that you know you went to college with or anything like that. And then you spend 4 years at an academy where every single person goes into the military. You're gonna have those connections. You're gonna get to units. Your commanders are gonna be classmates. So they're gonna be a couple years ahead of you, and you're gonna be like, oh my goodness, like you were the sergeant major when I was a plebe, and you're gonna have those faces, and you'll be able to do your job more efficiently and more effectively because you will have a network within your career, which I think is a huge point for the academies in general versus ours.
Yeah.
When you talk to your high school kids, how do you differentiate between senior academies and ROTC?
So,
what are the benefits? Do you go through the benefits of each one?
I do, and Dwayne advises as well, so I'll answer briefly on mine. I mean, again, first and foremost, it's service. But then it's back to, again, do you want the college experience or not, right? Because if you go ROTC, you'll get that college experience. If you want to go to the academies, you'll be deeper into the military experience because you're committing pretty much every summer, and the ROTC have that as well, but you're committing a significant amount of time to the academies and to the military while you're there. So that's how I kind of advise them. Dwayne, did you want to add?
No, but Jack, you touched on that as well. Obviously, you were in that seat, shooting that way, and you're right. Having that college experience And it's the same message I hear from my daughters today. One's already graduated, the other was a senior or two, having the college experience. However, I really resonated with what Deanna just described. If you think about it, the fellowship and the relationship network that the service academies produce, because you're together, you right, 24/7, 365, and you're in a military academy, you're not actually in a college or civilian university. And there are several private schools, Norwich, Texas A&M, to name a few, VMI, the Citadel, these other private military academies that create that same network that the was part of the relationship. But to be clear, to have the college experience is a wonderful balance for the ROTC path. It really is. And to be also clear, financially, as was mentioned, the ROTC program does an amazing job, an absolutely amazing job of covering almost all of the expenses. So from an economics perspective, they're pretty parallel. They're pretty on the great Jim, did anybody add on this one?
No, there are a lot of different pathways to commissioning. We just brought up Norwich, Texas A&M, Citadel, VMI. But they're all, I mean, if you go ROTC at Texas A&M, that's a vastly different experience than ROTC at Xavier. I mean, they want you to be in that core that's got a 100-year history. It's probably a closer approximation to being an academy than a lot of ROTC programs. So there's a lot of variety there. But there are different pathways that, I heard Bob, I think you were interested in that. Even Norwich. We haven't spoken about these kind of private schools.
Go ahead.
You are paying your way. This is not ROTC, and it's not the academy where you're fully funded with your tuition, uniforms, etc., and even paid while you're there. ROTC is paid. You get paid. So if you go to the Citadel for VMI or Norwich, you're actually paying tuition unless you have a scholarship there.
Yeah.
And so it's a commissioning source, but it's similar to ROTC that your odds are not super high. You might get a reserve, certainly you'll at least get a reserve commission. But very similar. I think those institutions immerse you, and you come out of those with a similar set of connectivity and fellowship to your classmates. So we want you to be aware that's a pathway. You're a pathway to service, and that's why we're here. I know we've got a very, everyone here is either a graduate or in West Point, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we're happy to support Air Force. They never feel the need to come here because we're in their backyard. Navy.
Except for in football.
Except for in football.
Right. One day a year.
Definitely.
But the Navy Air Force football game was yesterday.
Yeah.
They were like, oh, we're not coming out.
It's going to be fun to crush them.
I think it's also important, and even though this is a kind of a college, admissions panel, we'll happily talk about, enlisted opportunities. Going and enlisting and pocketing some money for a couple years, and then going to college, or even using that as an avenue into a service career or another career, something that you also, is very, very supportive. So you can ask a question along those lines as well.
We'll do one more question, and when we come back to the camera, we're going to have a few more lightning rounds, and we'll turn that back up.
I'm curious, I work with somebody who manages major organizations in New York, the West Point guy, very retired. When you enter West Point and you look at your future, or you're at West Point, what are you seeing some of the careers that people have done after they've graduated and done their military? What do you see?
Presidents. I mean, my best friend, she entered the academy, and I never heard of it. I was from a really small town in Griswold, Connecticut. We didn't really have it as really an option. So when she went, I looked it up because I was like, oh, cool, my best friend got into a prep program. So I looked it up, and I'm reading, and everyone who graduated from West Point, decorated generals, presidents of the United States, very, very influential people. And so I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is the place I want to go to, because people who graduate from here end up doing, great things. A lot of business CEOs, a lot of executives, a lot of people who do things. I can attribute that to the leadership experience you gain at that school. So that's what I think.
Can I add one more thing? Just on the topic of sort of taking a step back, the driving factor in my decision between ROTC and West Point was that West Point, I think, is unique in offering the entire environment of West Point is surrounded about making the cadet and growing the cadet to be better. It's an entire system. Whereas ROTC, you have the subset of ROTC, but the entire school in general and the people around you that go to class might not be in the same ROTC program, might not be facing the same challenges as you, and the entire greater school as a whole isn't setting an entire environment that encapsulates you and tries to grow you. Whereas the academies, everything that's done is methodically almost thought out and designed to put you with people through challenges and grow you like along a set career. And each year you learn something new, which I think is a pretty cool environment to be in. But
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I was telling this, I said this earlier. At ROTC, you might be getting up at 5 a.m. on a Saturday morning to do a 10-mile road march with 40 pounds on your back while your friends are sleeping off their hangovers. And that is tough, when you're going through one set of things and your friends, classmates are not. At West Point, you're all doing that stuff. So that, or at Navy, or at Air Force. So again, that's just another way of highlighting that difference.
All right, so back to the panel here. Max, I'm going to pick on you a little bit, right? So tell the group, tell the students, please, what's your perspective of the next 5 to 10 years? What do you think is going to happen, and how can that perhaps be translatable to where they are right now? So we're talking about freshmen and seniors in high school. Give some color there, your perspective.
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing I absolutely loved about West Point coming from when I was in high school was the certainty. And, I've never been worried, I guess, about job security. I guess I just have a trust that it'll work out. But it's really comforting going somewhere where like freshman year, what your job is going to be, and you don't have to really worry about getting there. Like, no matter how successful you are as a cadet, if you graduate, you are likely going to be a platoon leader just like everyone else. Like everyone has that spot. Yeah, their job might be different in the Army. It could be way different, but, you'll have a similar experience and you have that certainty of what you're going to do. As you go further, you don't know. Maybe you don't know how long you're going to stay in the Army. I don't know, personally. Most cadets don't really know. They kind of just play it by ear as they go in, and they see how service works for them, and they just make a life decision at some point. But I love that certainty, and I love how a career in the Army or the military, any branch, really sets you up. It gives you so many skills in leadership, in management. It could give you, concrete technical skills depending on what your job is. So, I'm not worried to maybe one day transition out and do what I want to do in the civilian sector. I think, I trust the process. I think it'll work out perfectly, and I'm not worried going into it at all.
That's cool. That is actually really cool background. Anyone wants to build on that? Because that's a super, I think, really powerful perspective. And right now, as cadets, three of you might be able to kind of spark something here with one of the students. Anything to add?
I'd like to build on it for these people who are going to be humble. We have a Fulbright scholar here. So, again, part of what you can achieve in the Army. Pete and Dwayne both went to Harvard Business School, post-Army career. While you're at the Academy, you can do things like going on exchange to Air Force. These three are doing.
They're part of 6, right?
Seven.
7 of you?
8 total.
2 of them sleep in back at the airport.
You're doing an Air Force flight thing on Saturday, so that
Cool, baby. All right, that's cool.
like I said, some of your friends are gonna be sleeping in.
Right.
Yeah, coming up to Aspen, but the other guys are down there training.
Jim was a West Point exchange over to the Naval Academy. All right, the same thing, same student did, right? And by the way, they're not here, they just get picked out of a hat. That's highly competitive to be selected to be one of our ambassadors, if you will, from West Point to the other service academies and vice versa. These are all rock stars. We're very fortunate.
Lexi, tell the audience about some of the things that people can do during the summers. Because again, you probably think, oh, you're just brilliant, or you're putting on a rucksack and crawling through mud. But there's a lot of things that you can do during your summers.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun. So one of the great things is you kind of get to build up your summer. There's some required things that you have to do, and then you get all these other opportunities on the side. So obviously your first summer, call it Beast. It's your cadet basic training. You get off the bus and start yelling at you. It's a great time. I had a lot of fun, actually.
Well, I mean, you build your best friends, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get your best friends there. We were talking about, the connections you make at West Point. Like, those people that you're there at, like, cadet basic training with, like, those are your best friends. Because you go through all this stuff together. You're waking up at 5 a.m., like, you're doing PT, and, like, you have these people that you can lean on, and that's like really incredible. And then each summer kind of builds on that. So, your second summer, you're out in the field again. You're getting a little more like advanced military training. This past summer, I had the opportunity to go down to Fort Moore, and I got to like be there at like a basic training for an armor unit. So I got to see the training that went on, and then I also, they put me on a tank, and I got to drive around in a tank, which, pretty amazing. But yeah, there's also a bunch of, besides just the military, there's a bunch of, great academic experiences. So I had an internship in DC this summer, so I got to work with, a contractor. It was mainly psychology focused. We were looking at like brainwaves, but we also got a trip to the Pentagon, and we got to, talk to like the Assistant Secretary of the Army for logistics. So, I mean, that's like a really crazy opportunity I, probably wouldn't have gotten at like another college. They usually don't let you just like walk into the Pentagon. So yeah, like I know you have a bunch of different experiences here.
Yeah, so Jack did actually a really cool thing this summer. But so me, one of the West Point, like I guess, more required things I did this summer, which this requirement can be filled in a range of things, but Jack did it as well. We were actually cadre for the basic training. So when you show up as a freshman that first summer, you're actually led by junior and senior cadets. It's not adults, officers leading you around. It's really cadet led. And that's really special. It's a really rewarding experience to see both sides, because I feel like it was just yesterday when I was like one of them. And then all of a sudden you're in charge of them for the day and every day. But what I did after that, or I guess it was before that, I got to intern at a lab over at MIT in Boston. And that's something I don't think I would have had the opportunity to do if I went to civilian school. I think like one of the best things about West Point is mentorship. You don't even fully need to seek it out. It's just going to be thrown onto you. And obviously you should seek it out still. But like people just want to help you. And I've had so many great, faculty in my department that are like, hey, you should apply for this thing. Or like, you should do this, you should do that. And they really just steered me in that direction. That's how I was able to get that opportunity this summer. And I don't think I would have found that in this civilian school, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, even the first summer, halfway through basic training, you get this thing called Ice Cream Social, where you get your sponsor for the year, and that's sort of like a mentor around West Point that you can go to their house. They can sort of care for you and keep an eye on you. And it turns out that my sponsor was one of the physics instructors and sort of took me under his wing and led me into research sector in West Point, which has been super cool. And so for the last 3 years, I've been exploring like nuclear inertial fusion, which I never thought I'd even be possible. I don't know. But just like random opportunities like that. I think the second summer I did an internship at Picatinny Arsenal, which does research and development for the armaments in the Army. So I just recently actually, they got back to us. They took one of our like small projects that we were working on. They further developed it and then credited us with a patent for a speed loader for the new ammunition that the Army's using. And then this last summer, Ethan, who's not here, and I went to the Republic of Georgia. We did mountain school for 3 weeks over there. That was a really cool experience, just seeing different cultures. And I mean, that's just as a cadet. You graduate, you go out, you could get posted, you go get stationed in Germany. I know you were stationed in Germany, Italy, Hawaii, Alaska. Like just really good world experiences, I think, which is pretty cool.
I want to double down on like the summer experiences at West Point. So you have opportunities and options, and they're available, right? A lot of students, and I always like praise my roommate because she never wanted to do any of like the academic or military. So they're called academic experience or like a military experience, and that will be like research or development or anything like these cadets were just talking about, and like they were just telling you about. But my roommate never wanted to do any of that. She went home every summer. She wanted to be with her family, so she went home. Which for me, I was like, thank goodness that we have cadets like you that go home, because I got to go to Israel for like 3 weeks and do, a tour around the entire country and learn about all the conflicts that are happening there, which are now, obviously much more relevant than they were back then when I went. And then I went to Germany for a spring break to just, do the tour of the entire Nuremberg. We had the tour guides, everything like that. I taught English in Thailand for 2 months out of my summer. I went to the mountain school that the Army offers. Like, there are so many things you can do. There's like the sign up online is so overwhelming. As long as you like see them all and actually like click on them and see who the points of contact are and reach out to them, like those opportunities are available. As a freshman, people will tell you like, oh, well, you can't really do those experiences as a freshman. That is a lie. As a freshman, I went to Thailand. That was like the coolest experience of my life. You know, especially getting to be around those cultures and you know, see how, you know, the world works. So like those opportunities are there and they're plentiful. Like that's like a sliver of, you know, what our whole class did. So I think it's super, super important, and all that stuff's paid for, by the way. So like we're talking money, and you know, you want to do these programs at ROTC, sure, yeah, but do you have like the money to pay for your, you know, flights and all this stuff, right? The Army pays for it and then pays you to do it while you're doing these things. So like that's super important. You go, it's called TDY. They pay your way, and then they pay you like per diem, so you guys, and all the food, everything's covered. So like it's super. The opportunities are just, you know, unmatched, I'd say. So that's my summary.
Hold on, I'm gonna do lightning round here, then we're gonna turn it over. Right, lightning round, real quick. In the video, we saw athletics and sports. Let's hear just from each one of you what that looked like for you. Real brief. I'm gonna start at the far end. Pete, athletics and sports while you're there at the Service Academy. Go. What do you do?
Intramurals.
And a lot of it.
So again, back to what we've talked about, curiosity is key, whether or not you're in at Academy or you're at Norwich, right? So I learned a ton of sports while I was there. I learned racquetball. I did the sports I knew, but I also did boxing. Never boxed before I went to the Academy. Never played racquetball. Squash. I mean, you can go down the list, and that's what they've all talked about here. And I'll tie it back to the first question quickly, Dwayne, about what do you want to do to prepare for when you go in and are thinking about service. Find something you haven't tried and go out and be curious and just go join a club. Go join and be part of an organization. By being part of an organization and a club, you may not like it. That's fine. Serve your commitment, do your time there, and then go try something else. And that's what everyone's mentioned here. And that's the path through the academies and through military officer to keep trying. And even as civilians, right, when Dwayne asked the second question, what do I look for in candidates that are joining my company? Are they curious? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to apply themselves? And that's what you can start now in high school. So that was just the pieces I'd like to.
Yeah, keep going. We're doing sports, athletics.
Yeah, so I do club soccer, and then I do the ski club, which is just like a trip section sort of thing. You take trips to Killington, Vermont, and ski like 1 or 2 weekends out of the year.
We also have our own ski resort.
We do. There's 1 or 2 trails. I mean, it's still a ski resort.
Victor Cox.
And then aside from that, I do Sandhurst, Company Sandhurst, which is our military skills competition. So I think I use that as a good way just to stay up to date on military skills, because I know I'm going to be applying them later down the road. So.
Keep going.
Freshman year, I did combatives, which is like jiu-jitsu military version. And then sophomore year, I also did Sandhurst, a different team than Jack, but same idea. I think it'll prepare me, hopefully, for Ranger School or stuff I'll get into after I graduate.
Didn't we win Sandhurst, and haven't we won Sandhurst pretty regularly?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago, Air Force won.
Three.
Three.
We haven't really won
Three.
straight.
We won last year. We won last year.
Okay, that's good.
We won
Hey,
last year.
Yes.
black and gold, that's right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I also do Sandhurst, or military skills competition, but I also did a semester of combatives, which was a pretty cool experience for me. So I'm the only girl on the team, so I got to fight a bunch of guys, which was a fun time. But yeah, also just like the culture of fitness at West Point is really great. So you know, the gyms, there's always people in there, but yeah, it's a really supportive environment that way.
I did Sandhurst my freshman year, and I did a little bit my sophomore year, but I knew I wanted to be an infantry officer, so I was like, okay, what's like the most, you know, masculine thing I could do? I was a manager for the Army football team for 2 years.
Cool.
It was awesome. I learned so much from the coaches and the team, and just being in that environment really actually did help set me up for leadership in the infantry, which is really awesome. But my junior and senior year, I wanted to do more of an individual type of development, so I climbed. I was on the climbing team at West Point, and I did the climbing club. So there is 1 million clubs, and I was probably involved with like 50% of them. So
Now watch, brigade athletic officers season here.
All right. So besides all the intramural stuff, soccer, lacrosse, I think the New York Times once called West Point intramural lacrosse one of the most dangerous collegiate pursuits on the East Coast. These bunch of guys who don't know what they're doing with sticks, snapping the play. But senior year, I tried out for the marathon team, and they just had us run a 10K, and I was the 11th guy, and they were taking 10. Well, I just trained on my own all fall, and ran with the marathon team runs the Marine Corps Marathon. The idea is to qualify for Boston in the spring. Trained on my own, towed the line at the Marine Corps, not wearing the West Point gear because I didn't make the team. But I smoked half the team, and they had to put me on the team for Boston. So that was my, my best athletic experience was making the marathon team kind of on my own outside of the trial process.
Yeah, you did very, obviously, humble. Like I said, brigade athletic officer, 4-year deal. We all know that's a big responsibility, and also it's a big role model for the rest of us. I got recruited to play baseball. I didn't even know how to spell West Point in South Texas. I didn't even know what it was. I've never been there, but sort of plane ride up there, and like you said, at Beast, you get yelled at. I wasn't laughing. Right, exactly. All right, that's a good lightning round. Let's turn it. We had a question in the corner. Okay, so yeah, right. Let's roll it into the kids. All right, no parents, kids. You guys can ask any question. And I don't want to see if there's a bunch of blank faces. You guys got to ask a question. We're going to just sit here and watch. Yeah, let's start. Please.
What's the difference, like, post-graduation? Like, I feel like service would be different, and like, depending on what service.
That's a great question. Yeah, you might want to touch on that one. So you're asking about the various different scopes of work, branches, and assignments that one might anticipate. Let's do the Army, but maybe we'll touch it also. Right, keep going.
Okay, so I think that this is a really important question because most people go to the military academy with the idea that they're going to serve in the Army or, Navy, Air Force to some capacity, but have no idea what that looks like. But your entire experience and your effort in all your classes for 4 years will lead into what job you do in the military, right? So how well you do in your classes and all this stuff. So you won't really know, what is out there until maybe like your, sophomore, junior year, you'll really start to learn the different. There's 17 branches in the Army. So there's, combat arms, you have infantry, armor, so armor's like tanks, which is kind of going away a little bit in terms of like the way that they, process people. And then they have FA, so big guns, we're talking artillery. You have aviation, so you can be a helicopter pilot. You could do a lot of different jobs in the Army. Those are just like the combat focus. There's engineers. There's AG, right? So you can be an officer who's just in charge of like the HR stuff, right? And then logistics officers in charge of moving equipment, and transportation officers, and there's 17 different options. So there's a lot, and there's a lot that goes into that. And you'll be asked every year, and you will rank all of those on a list from like 1 to 17 every year you're there. And so as you learn more about each of those branches, you will, slowly get closer and closer to branch night, which is when you decide, or you figure out what branch you get. So I think it's really good that you're thinking about that now, because a lot of people go in very broad, and then their hearts are crushed senior year, but you're like, you didn't come here to be this kind of officer, you came here to serve. So it's really funny to see, I was a photographer for one of the events, and a lot of seniors, had their hearts broken that, like, the day that they found out what their branch was. But it's interesting, and you don't even know as a cadet what that looks like in the Army. So to have like a really strong connection to it is very interesting to me. Coming experience.
Yeah, I just want to expand on that. So again, to the comments made. So if you go to West Point, 98+% will be commissioned as Army officers. So got to think about the branches of service in the Department of Defense. My son's class, he had several rugby teammates, one branched Air Force and one branched Marine Corps. Very rare, but can be done out of the West Point Academy. ROTC programs, again, are similar to the academies in that you would branch each. So the time of commitment is standard for 5 years. Then you can add years. Like my son wanted aviation. His grades were right on the border. He had to choose this term called BRADSO. So he committed extra time to service so he could get aviation. Today at West Point, it's a 10-year commitment if you choose the aviation branch that she went through. Still a great choice because, again, your first 2 years, my son went to Fort Fort Rucker, now Fort Novosel, Alabama, is 2 years of flying. I just talked to another West Point grad. He had a son graduate from the Naval Academy. He became a pilot. Their standard commitment, if you go pilot out of the Naval Academy, is 8 years. Plus then you add additional commitment time. So as they talked about, like at aviation, my son added on another year of service because they trained you for that. If you go to a school during your career as a captain, maybe you go back to grad school, like HBS or anywhere else. Those additional years of service. But that kind of helps out in terms of, and then Dwayne, you might want to expand on ROTC. Is it a 4-year commit?
Obviously, active duty is 4 plus another time in the reserve.
IRR, right,
IRR for
yeah.
4, or ROTC, right out of the gate, go reserves, and that's an 8-year commitment in the reserve capacity.
So
Or National Guard, sorry.
Yeah.
Or National Guard.
So I just wanted to expand on, there's the branches of service within DOD, Air Force, Marines, Navy, and remember Marines are part of Navy, right? We now have the Space Force and Army. So those are all the branches within the Department of Defense. Within the Army, you then have all the branches that were just described. Similarly, in the Navy and the Air Force, right, if you're not a pilot, they have, again, all the different types of service you can do.
Students, another question. We got a little bit of time left here. I just want to make sure we get the question. Yes, sir, right there.
So for summer programs like high school, like what would you guys recommend? How good? Like, you say,
Right. Good. Quick, anyone.
So the first thing I would say is like definitely try one of the Academy summer programs, and it doesn't necessarily like I'm not going to push the West Point one. I didn't go to the West Point one. I went to the Coast Guard one, and while I was at the Coast Guard summer program, I realized I didn't want to go into the Coast Guard, and I really actually wanted to go to West Point. And I'm really grateful that I did that because if I hadn't, I probably would have applied to and gone to Coast Guard instead. And then I would have been at an academy where I really wasn't where I was supposed to be. Because I mean, I love West Point. Like, I wouldn't have changed my decision for anything. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the West Point summer program, but like between your junior and senior year, all of the academies have summer programs. Like week 2 weeks long. Like go to one of them.
Summer leadership experience is what they call it at West Point.
So yeah, go to one of them. And you know, if that's not the academy for you and you find that out, that's great because that saves you a lot of time, right? So yeah, that would be
one
my
quick
advice.
footnote on that though is if you're applying to the academies and you have a choice between Boys State, Girls State, or the summer leaders experience, choose Boys State or Girls State. Going to this SLE doesn't add points to your application in terms of getting in. Boys State and Girls State will add a significant amount. So
Next
just
question.
quick. Yeah, Boys State, Girls State applies to all academies. You get the points towards your application.
Sir,
what is a typical day look like?
oh, wow. Typical day for a cadet. I'll let one of the cadets answer that. Go.
Max got that.
Formation at 6:50 these days, 6:55. So I'll wake up around 6:30, try to get ready real quick, get in uniform, get outside. That's just like a routine. You kind of stand out, you see everyone's out there, do some stuff, go to breakfast. It's mandatory as of this last year. It used to be optional for upperclassmen, but mandatory breakfast. I think it's great personally. Some people are a little salty about having to go to breakfast in the morning. But you really get to see all your friends every morning, and maybe I'm slightly a morning person, so I think West Point probably put that on me. So mandatory breakfast, first class at 7:40. Not everyone has a 7:40. As a freshman, you more than likely will, just because you've got a lot of classes you got to do. So first class 7:40. Class throughout the day. You'll have lunch, mandatory. That's the main mandatory meal where they'll give announcements. That's where if there's a special visitor, they'll say like, hey, I think a week ago the president of Kosovo was there, and they're like, welcome her here, and then everyone claps really loud and like throws chairs around. And then you'll have classes after that. Classes will end at around 3:34. You'll go to intramurals or your team or whatever it is, club, NCAA. Do that, and then dinner is just on you. It's buffet. You could skip it if you want. It's not a mandatory meal, but everyone has dinner really. And then the evening's yours most of the time. So. Yeah, so there's, especially as freshmen, there's blocked up time where you are. It's kind of like you're supposed to be in your room studying, or in the library. I would say that these days it's really. I mean, I don't know. I never had someone knocking on my door to make sure I was studying. I was most of the time. So.
No.
Did you have someone knock on your door?
Sometimes like officers will go around and make sure that like freshmen are supposed to have their doors open and studying.
There's a lot of systems in place to make sure you don't get off track with school. Like there's a flagging system to where if you're slacking in grades or you're starting to fail classes, they will like force resources onto you. They won't wait for you to come out. They will force them onto you. Like we're gonna set you up with a tutor, or we're not gonna let you leave this weekend. Things like that. But really, it's most people are not flagged. Like you can stay on top of your work. Really.
Is that a 7-day schedule or 6-day schedule?
So that's 5 days that we have like academic work, and then our weekends are kind of split. So some weekends we're at the football games on Saturday, and then some weekends we have like military training. So that would usually be Friday night and through Saturday. You can do all sorts of military training. It's really dependent on like your company that will organize that training. And then some weekends are yours; they're free, and you can go into the city if you want. Not as a plebe, you have a little 5-mile radius. But yeah, those weekends are yours.
Do you guys still drill and parade, or that's
Yes.
the only way?
Yes. So
Always
sometimes after school, especially during football season, you'll have like a practice parade. So because when other teams come to visit us at West Point, we like to put on a little show. So we'll parade around. So we practice that. It's also like a great way to it teaches like the little things, like attention to detail, like discipline. You're out there like parading. Everything's got to be accurate.
And that'll be in the intramural time. So you just want to practice that day. Go drill.
I want to make sure we capture maybe one more question or so from the students. Anyone? Students? Parents? Your turn, real quick. Aaron, yes ma'am.
I don't know if you're allowed to answer this, but his legacy counts at home.
Good what?
Legacy.
Didn't they just pass a law? They just passed a law that like legacy is no longer a thing. So like if it's on the application, they can't necessarily count it towards. So that's like a new law that they just passed. Like,
So let me just caveat
but
that.
he's probably more.
Well, I'll just caveat that. And I said this to a person I was speaking to earlier today. The only thing legacy does is it helps you get ahead of the process. Most colleges, people don't start thinking of applying until first semester senior year. You're already missing a lot of the boat for the academies and even ROTC. You got to start your junior year. And having gone through the process and now being a liaison, I just knew what to focus on. So again, I talked about points. For West Point, it's an 80,000 point system. So 60% is academic, 30% is leadership, and 10% of those points, 800, are for your physical aptitude test. And what I counsel kids is start early as a sophomore. Know the system, know the process, and the earlier you start preparing your physical part, your academy nomination from a representative or congressman, knowing their processes, it'll just help you. So that's the only point that a legacy does, is we kind of knew the system. We knew we had to get an appointment. We knew we had to be physically in shape, and we looked up the scores. And then academics, 60%. So my one caveat for ROTC and all, these are all bright people. I wasn't bright. So the caveat I had to do was, and I tell this to all the kids I counsel, take the SAT or ACT score during your sophomore year. The Academy's super score. So there's no failure in taking the test multiple times. So I just wanted to caveat that.
Any other questions from Darren? Right? Yes, sir. We do not have what would be that we call a junior ROTC at the high school level. We currently do not. The closer to down in Glenwood High School has a very robust program. That's a good question.
I think kids from harder to the home course man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So the academies require a nomination. There, again, you do not have to be political. I was from Iowa. My parents were not political. We were farmers. All the congressmen and senators today have all of their applications typically online and can be looked up. So my first thing and recommendation as a freshman, sophomore, go into your current representatives and congressmen, look up their application process, their deadlines, and then just send them a quick note. Hey, my son or daughter is thinking about it, or if daughter or son, hey, we're thinking about applying. Can we meet? They have a representative on their staff that handles their applications. So that would be my one recommendation.
Yeah, it's not a political process at all.
Not at all.
It's truly kind of an administrative feature to the Service Academy application process.
Exactly.
It does not exist in the ROTC world.
And it's all online today. And then they'll have an interview as well. So
Anything else? Yes, sir. One last one for the Gipper. There we go.
Do freshmen get to go home for the holidays?
Yeah, so
Like in our days,
You know the saying when the cows went home? Do you guys know that saying? It's like, oh yeah, we'll do that when the cows come home. That was like a legitimate thing back in the day because the West Point cadets, so they call them plebes, yucks, cows, and fursies. I'm like way removed now, and I've been, because civilian applications, they don't know any of those things, so I've had to change the terms in my head a couple times. But so they say the cows, right? It's your junior year. It was the first year that West Point would send their students home. So they would say when the cows went home because it literally took 3 years for the students who were at West Point to come home. And it was funny because like all the airlines, and all the travel on that day was like crazy because at the time, it wasn't as robust as it is now. So it was a big thing. So anyways, little history there on
Not anymore.
not anymore.
Not anymore.
Same
Not
breaks
anymore.
as normal school.
Yeah.
Your summer, you'll have those things mixed in.
Yeah.
Your winter break might be like a week shorter than most kids.
Yeah, so typically like the main breaks that you get, everyone gets are Thanksgiving, which is about like 4 to 5 days, and then you'll get a winter break, which is usually December 22nd through January 6th-ish, and then you'll get a spring break as well. And then there's 3-day weekends. I believe freshmen get 2 passes per semester, so there's 2 3-day weekends. You can take them for the 3-day weekends and go home if you'd like.
round of applause for these folks.
guys.
You guys are sticking around. Obviously, we're still at the booth as well. If anyone wants to talk about it,
Yeah.
we do. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.